Hey, welcome Senna. Sorry that I can't be with you today, but hopefully through this video lesson it will be just like having me there. And we've got a really exciting thing to do today. So let's get into it. Today we're going to be looking at the two types of chemical reactions that you can do. Now before we start, because we're working with chemicals and dangerous stuff, there's three things that we need, every one of us, before we start. So first off, you need some safety goggles. You need a lab coat. And you need some gloves. So if you want to go ahead right now and pause the video so that everyone has time to go and get those three things on, that would be fantastic. Remember, your glasses stay on your face, not just hanging around on the desk or near you. Alright, so if we have our glasses on, then we're ready to go to the first of our experiments, because we're actually doing two experiments today. We're going to do the first one, which I'll explain how to do now. Then we're going to come back and talk about that first one. And then we're going to do the second one, and then we'll come back and talk about that. And all in all, we should be able to get this done before we're ready to leave for the day. So, the very first experiment, we actually only need about 3 pieces of equipment for it. So what you're going to get is one of these, a pestle and mortar. We're going to get some potassium permanganate, and that's some cool stuff. If you can see here, it's sort of a glittery purple substance right there, like a powder. And you're going to have some glycerine or glycerol. And we're going to have a pipette. So you pause now and take a moment so that everyone can go and grab that equipment and have it in front of them. But we're not actually doing anything with it yet. We just want to make sure that our groups, and we probably want 2 groups, so split us in half, has that pestle and mortar, potassium permanganate, and a pipette. And then Mrs. B is going to have 1 bottle of glycerine for us to use. Okay, once you've gotten that, here's what we do with it. This is a very simple one. Now, potassium permanganate and glycerine are both used in first aid kits. They're what we call antiseptics or antibacterials. And what that means is that they kill germs. So these are 2 things that you would rub on your wounds if you got hurt. But what we can actually do is modify this potassium permanganate, this purple powder, so that it actually has quite a serious reaction with our glycerine. So here's the steps to do. I'm going to do them first, and then after that, I'm going to explain it a couple of times, and then it will be time for you all to do it. So don't touch any of your equipment yet, just watching and listening, and then it'll be your turn. These are very simple steps. You're going to get your potassium permanganate, and you're going to put it into your pestle and mortar. So it's all there, nice and glittery in your pestle and mortar. What we need to do then is take our pestle and mortar, and we need to grind up our potassium permanganate. You want to squish it right down so that instead of being glittery, it's now a really fine powder. Now the longer you spend squishing it down, the better job you do of making it into a powder and not glittery, the better this reaction's going to be. So you want to spend a good 5 minutes or so just grinding that powder down until it's really fine. Alright. So take a few minutes to do that. Pause the video. Take 5 minutes until you've ground that down really well. Okay, if you're ready for the next step, this is the exciting part. What you're going to do is you're going to get your ground down potassium permanganate, and you're going to put it all in the middle so that it's in a big pile in the middle. Oh, it's a bit hard to do on the camera, but in the... Oh, let's grab this. In the middle there, you want it to be in a big pile in the middle. So once you got in a big pile in the middle, comes the exciting part. You're going to grab your pipette, and you're going to get a big squirt of glycerine. So once you got that glycerine, you want to get it, and you want to squeeze it down into and on top of your potassium permanganate, that purple powder you now have. After you've done that, you just need to wait for a second and sit and watch it. Now at this point, even though it's exciting, you don't want to put your head over your pestle and mortar. We're just going to watch like this, not like this, because then we could get ourselves into some trouble. So, step 1, put your purple substance in there. Step 2, grind it up really, really good. Step 3, put it into a pile in the middle. And step 4, squeeze your pipette of glycerine onto it. We then watch. Alright, take a few minutes to do that. Pause this video and I'll check back in with you all when we're ready. Okay, so take a few minutes to share with Ms. B what you have done and what you've seen there. So what you would have seen is some very exciting purple flames coming out of them. And there's something that's called that. This is what's called an exothermic reaction, which sounds like a fancy word, but exo means to exit or to release, and thermic refers to heat. So what's actually happened is that your potassium permanganate and your glycerine contain lots and lots of energy, but that sort of black goop that you're left with once you burn it doesn't have very much energy in it. But we can't just destroy the energy, it's got to go somewhere. So that energy that's stored in your glycerine and potassium permanganate is being released out as heat and flame. It's the exact same thing that happens when you burn a piece of wood. That piece of wood has got lots of energy in it, and when you set it on fire, it releases that energy as fire and heat, and you're left with the ash, which doesn't have very much energy in it. That's why you can't burn ash after you've already set it on fire, because it's got no more energy to release out as flames or as heat. Okay, see if you can take a minute and think of any other exothermic reaction. So that's a reaction that makes something hot, makes something hotter, so you feel or see flame or light or feel heat from it. So take a minute to see if you can think about any other examples of that. Good, so some examples you might think of is when you burn petrol in your car to make it move, when you burn a piece of wood, when you breathe and when you eat sugar and you use that energy to move forward. Those are all examples of exothermic reactions. Alright, what we're going to do now, because I'm sure you notice that these are smoking a lot, is we're going to put them up to the back of the room, up on that sort of raised platform, so get them out of the way so it's not smoky while we do this next one. So you can take your pestle and mortar and your burnt potassium and you put them at the back of the room. Once you're ready, let's go on to the next one. So just then we did an exothermic reaction, which releases heat. What we're going to do now is an endothermic reaction, and that's one that sucks in heat and makes things feel cold. This is another simple one to do. What you're going to have is 3 pieces of equipment again. 4 really if you count the 2 test tubes, but you're going to have what's called a conical flask, like this. You're going to have a stopper for it, like this. Fits on there. You're going to have a piece of wood. I've just got a post-it note because I forgot to get the piece of wood. And you're going to have 2 chemicals with fancy names. You're going to get ammonium thiosinate and you're going to get barium hydroxide. You can tell that you've got different ones even if you don't know the name, because they have different numbers and letters on the test tubes. Okay, so again, you're going to have a conical flask, you're going to have a lid, and we're going to have our 2 test tubes, and we're going to have a block of wood. I want to remind everyone at this moment that we should still have on our 3 pieces of safety equipment. We should still have our gloves, we should still have our lab coat, and we should still have our glasses on. So this is a very simple one to do again. What you're going to do first is you're going to take your block of wood and you're going to run it under the tap. And by doing that, you're going to create a puddle on top of your wood. You're going to try and balance it very carefully so you can get it back to your desk and still have a nice puddle of water onto that board of wood. After that, very easy step. You're going to get your barium hydroxide, you're going to put it in your conical flask. Then you're going to go get your ammonium thiosinate, the other chemical, and you're going to pour that into your conical flask. So you're going to mix your 2 test tubes of chemicals into here. One of them, the one that says NH4, that can be difficult to get out, so you might need to get a stirring rod and just swirl it around in there so that you can tip it out easier. As soon as you've got those 2 chemicals in there, you're going to stick your flask on. You're going to put your thumb over the top and hold it down the bottom there so it can't get out. And you're going to shake it really, really hard. What you should be feeling is that it's going to get very cold. Once you've shaken it and those 2 powders have started getting cold or turned into a liquid, you're going to put them onto the water on your your wooden block, and you're going to leave it there like that. Okay? Now, while it's there, you can touch the sides of it, but you got to be very careful that you don't try and lift it off. You want it to be nice solid contact on there. After it's frozen for about 5 minutes, you want to see if you can pick up your conical flask and have the wood block stick to it. So, to run through how we do that again, we're going to get water on our wooden block and try and keep a puddle there. We're going to take our 2 chemicals and we're going to mix them into our conical flask. We're going to put our stopper on and we're going to shake it, being careful to keep our thumbs on the stopper so that we don't spray chemicals everywhere. Once we've done that, we're going to put it on our puddle and we're going to leave it there, and then after a little while we'll try and pick up the flask and see if the wooden block will stay attached to it. So pause the video there, take a minute to try and do that one. Alright, so now you've done that, what should have happened during that is that your conical flask and your chemicals in it would have turned into a liquid and they would have gotten very, very, very cold. Alright, and this is what's called an endothermic reaction. And what that means is that the liquid that you get there actually has more energy in it than the 2 chemicals that you started with. It's the opposite of our first experiment where what we ended up with had less energy. In this one, what we end up with has more energy. And to get that energy, it's got to suck energy in the form of heat around from its surroundings. So it's gonna, when you feel it, it's gonna feel cold. And that's because it's stealing energy from your hand. It's stealing the warmth from your hand so that it can turn into that liquid. Now this is something that you see a lot in those ice packs that you get if you're sick, the ones that you crack and then they get cold. That's the same reaction. It's also the same reaction that plants do. When they take sunlight to grow, they're using the energy, the warmth from the sun to make their chemical reaction to make sugar. So they're taking energy in to create something that's got more energy than they started with. Anyway guys, I hope that you have enjoyed them. I think that after up to now we should be around the end of our lesson. If we haven't, then maybe take a practice thinking about differentiating between those 2 reactions that we had, exothermic and endothermic, or simply like really good scientists, recording and writing down our observations of our experiment as well as the steps that we did to get there. So that's saying things like, we saw a blue flame, we felt cold, this one was hot, this one was cold, this is what we mixed together, this was the next step. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great afternoon and I'll see you next week.